India's post-Operation Sindoor diplomacy is under focus, and there are mixed views as to how India has dealt with diplomatically to Operation Sindoor. Joining me today is someone who's one of India's most eminent diplomats. He's been former National Security Advisor, former Foreign Secretary, and also Ambassador to both Pakistan and China. Privileged to be joined by Mr. Shivshankar Menon. Appreciate your joining us here, Mr. Menon. I want you to give me an overview to the big question I want to pose. Has India's global standing been enhanced since Operation Sindoor, or in a sense diminished? Or are we back to square one when it comes to India and Pakistan and the alleged rehyphenation of the two countries?
I'm not sure that we can measure India's place in the world on a minute-to-minute, hour-to-hour, event-by-event basis. Basically, I think, India's place in the world is where it was. I don't think that has changed fundamentally. The world's interest in India is also the same as it was before. I think as far as Operation Sindoor is concerned, and I think the world understands what we face in terms of terrorism, in terms of, and you would notice that we got support across the board after Pahalgam. But when it comes to a conflict between India and Pakistan, countries react on the basis of their interest and of what's in it for them, and the prospect of a nuclear conflict worries many countries. And Pakistan beats that drum. Pakistan cries wolf regularly. So, yes, diplomacy was necessary. I think we went out and explained ourselves. But I don't think we should also set impossible tasks to diplomacy. I don't think we should ask our diplomats to change the way other countries behave. They've always behaved on the basis of their interests and what's in it for them.
The reason I ask you this is, look at what's happened, Mr. Menon, in the last 6 weeks. Only recently, a US CENTCOM chief has called Pakistan a phenomenal partner in counter-terrorism. Pakistan got the second tranche of its IMF loan. The ADB has given it a loan. The World Bank is giving it a loan. Pakistan has become vice chair of a UN Security Council Committee on Counter-Terrorism, chairman of a committee on Taliban sanctions. It almost seems as if while the world may condemn terror, they want to still indulge and engage with Pakistan. Explain this paradox to us.
Well, as I said, the world will do what suits their interest. They find Pakistan useful. In fact, in many ways, over the last few years, Pakistan has tried to make herself useful to other people, whether it is in CENTCOM's fight against IS Khorasan, for instance, or whether it is the Pakistanis now investing in cryptocurrency, which is being pushed by the White House. You'll see the Pakistan Chief of Army Staff is heading to Washington on a visit. They will use this to see what they can get out of it. So I don't think that has changed in any fundamental way. That's why I said, don't set impossible tasks for Indian diplomacy. Our job is not to actually prevent IMF loans to Pakistan. The world doesn't want Pakistan to collapse into complete anarchy. So they will continue to work with Pakistan. I don't think, that's why I say it's important what goals you choose to set yourself.
But should we not, Mr. Menon? But should we not, Mr. Menon, be looking to isolate Pakistan when it comes to at least terror? That minimal agenda that this is a country that sponsors and finances terror or directs terror against India. And in the absence of that, the question arises, have we been able to sufficiently convince the world that Pakistan is the epicenter of terror?
The world doesn't respond on the basis of whether they are convinced or not. The world responds on the basis of what's in their interest. Today, unlike 10 years ago, the world does not see Pakistan as offering a terrorist threat to themselves. 10 years ago, when the global war on terror was on, the US, Europe, Denmark, the UK, all of them saw terrorist threats emanating from Pakistan, affecting them directly. So they will condemn terrorism, yes. And what you do is your business. They won't get in your way either. But you cannot expect them to act beyond their interests. It's not a question of how convinced they are. In fact, they are convinced. Nobody has gone against the narrative that this originated in Pakistan.
But Mr. Menon, let me, since you mentioned 10 years ago in the global war of terror, let me take you back to 2008, Mumbai, and 26/11. You were at that stage foreign secretary, and the government of Manmohan Singh adopted what was called the policy of strategic restraint. You didn't go in for kinetic military action. You did manage to get considerable support, but now you've got a government which goes in for kinetic action and almost describes the previous governments as weak. That India now is showing its muscle unlike the past. How do you see that? Are we now showing a muscle to the world that we couldn't do in 2008?
Let me make it clear. We didn't go in for overt military responses in 2008. That doesn't mean that there haven't been what this government calls surgical strikes or actions across the LOC, actions before. All that has happened before. Secondly, I don't think you can compare 2008 to 2025. The situation is very different. The international situation today is actually much harder from an Indian point of view. The international attitude towards Pakistan has made herself useful to China, US. China-US rivalry actually has worked in Pakistan's favor in some ways. There is a whole host of things which I think you need to distinguish. So we are in a different situation. You have a whole range of tools to use. You have diplomatic tools, you have political tools, you have military tools. No one single one, and you use a mix of them. But as I keep saying, this is not a problem which has a solution. This is not an engineering problem. This is a process. And you have to choose your tools depending on the circumstances you find yourself in. This government feels that military force and at this stage, no talks is the right answer. And they've tried to explain their stance to the world. I think it was useful sending delegations, but because it shows that all of India is united in this fight against terrorism. But to expect then that the rest of the world would change its behavior, that I think is asking too much.
You've also seen the stand that India has taken, for example, on the Indus Water Treaty. Do you believe that that's a good step, that we need to raise the costs of terror on Pakistan? That's one way to proceed ahead and tell the world enough is enough.
I think we do need to raise the costs to Pakistan of terror. And I think the water issue is one that certainly we need to move on from the original terms of the Indus Treaty. It's been misused by Pakistan, and frankly, it doesn't work anymore. But the solution, I think, has to be found together. And we had suggested amendments to the treaty. Pakistan hasn't come back to that. Now we've held it in abeyance. Let's see where it goes. Let's see whether the Pakistanis are willing to actually see some sense. But yes, I do believe that ultimately this is one of the tools that we will have to use.
But given your experience of Pakistan, of dealing with Pakistan and China, do you think anything will really change? Will either Pakistan change or China change in the near future when it comes to their attitudes towards India?
China has changed attitudes. If you look in the last 80 years, China's attitude has shifted depending on the circumstances, and the relative balance of power actually seems to affect the way China's attitude changes. In Pakistan's case, unfortunately, we've all become very cynical because we've heard too often Pakistani leaders saying, we've changed, now everything is different, we understand that terror is terrible, etc., etc. And each time we've been let down by what happened. So as this is why I said earlier, it seems to me as long as Pakistan is constituted, the Pakistani polity is constituted the way it is, the Pakistan army has the kind of institutional interest and hold over that polity that it has today, I think it's difficult to expect fundamental change.
But does the world respect us more in 2025 when we've launched military action, caused, in a way, called Pakistan's nuclear blackmail by striking deep inside Pakistan, Punjab, targeting terror infrastructure in comparison to 2008 when we adopted this policy of strategic restraint? Because you in your book also seem to suggest that you believe in hindsight that was the right thing to do. In 2025, do you believe this was the right thing to do? And therefore, do we gain more respect in the world as a result of taking this strong military action?
Well, I said in the book itself that if there was another similar terrorist attack, no government in India would be able to exercise the kind of restraint that there had been before in 2008. For me, it was quite clear that there were a choice of options, and that in a new situation where deterrence had failed, then you would have to choose different instruments, and you'd respond differently. Today, I'm not sure that you can compare these two. Whether the world respects us more or not, you have to ask the world. I can't speak for the world. And I don't think that's the goal of policy. The goal of policy is to create outcomes. If you're chasing status, glory, if you want to be loved, if you want respect, then you do another whole set of things. Run an advertising agency. But this is not, I think, the goal of your foreign and security policy is to create outcomes and to manage difficult situations. And I think to that extent, yes, I think we are managing. In fact, we have managed. Look at 2008. You had 8 years without a major terrorist attack after your response in 2008. That says something. And I think what the real measure of the success of policy is outcomes. And today you can't say this is the outcome of Sindoor or not. It's too close.
The reason I'm asking you, you've seen the manner in which the Modi government is now reaching out across the world with these all-party delegations. Do you really believe that that makes a difference given the fact that diplomacy is a process, not an event? Are we getting too caught up in the optics of the here and now of event management rather than seeing diplomacy as a process where you convince countries, including possibly Pakistan, slowly but surely to abandon this path of terror?
That's another big question, whether we can change Pakistani behavior, or at least the use by the Pakistan Army and the ISI of terrorism as an instrument of state policy. To me, it seems that asking that when Pakistan is constituted the way she is today is really asking too much. It seems unlikely, given the present state of Pakistan and the way it's constituted, and the role, the social, political, other role that these jihadi tanzeems actually have in today's Pakistan. It's difficult for me to foresee a fundamental change in Pakistani behavior, as you said. So if that's your goal, if that's the outcome you want, then I think, yes, you have to, then you're in it for a very long term. Then you have a whole different set of things to do. And one operation or another is not going to solve this problem.
So in a sense, you're saying what the Israelis say, that you're going to have to constantly mow the grass because the grass will keep growing. The next time there's a terror attack, you will again have to possibly pursue now this policy of kinetic action. And you're therefore saying that you can't judge Operation Sindoor's diplomatic success.
That's the phrase I used in my book, actually, the Israeli phrase about mowing the grass. But there is a difference in our situation and the Israeli situation.
Yes.
We are dealing with hostile forces and terrorism that is sponsored by organs of state power in a nuclear weapons state on our border. This is much worse than anything that Israel has faced. If you look at it in terms of sheer power and what it can bring to bear.
But
in a conventional army That is powerful. That is one of the most powerful in the world. So our problem in many ways, yes, what we are doing can be described as mowing the grass. And the grass will grow. We'll have to go back and mow it again. But to my mind, we're in this for a very long haul.
But it's not just Pakistan and its army, Mr. Menon, isn't it China? Many call it chin pack. Many believe China is the sort of elephant in the room. That even during Operation Sindoor, it was China which was guiding the Pakistan army. Therefore, we face the fear or the possibility of a two-front war. Does that in a way, again, constrain us? Or do you believe that that is a challenge that we will have to now meet? That we're not just dealing with Pakistan, but we're dealing with what some would call chin pack?
I think the possibility of two-front war is something that we've planned for and worked on actually since 2008 within the government of India. That's not a new idea. I think it's the level of fusion between the Pakistani and Chinese militaries that I think is something that needs to be, and for me is the big learning from this round, is we have to look very carefully into how far they work together, how far operations were actually fused, and how far they did. I don't know enough. I mean, I'm outside government, have been for a long time, but I think that is something we need to look at very closely. Not just on the military side, but also on the diplomatic and other sides.
But is that the challenge then for India? It's not just about how we deal with Pakistan, it's also how we deal with China. As we look to establish ourselves as a voice of the global south, as we look to have a place on the global high table, we have an adversary on our border in China that makes determined efforts in a way to try and constrain India and its global ambitions.
You're absolutely right. For me, this is our fundamental strategic challenge, is how we deal with China and how we deal with the consequences of China's rise and of China's changed behavior over the last decade. That includes Pakistan, that includes Chinese presence in the subcontinent. It includes a whole host of other things, including our economic relationship with China and so on. For me, that is critical. That is the core of our strategic issue, and that's really the issue we need to be looking at.
But many believe the way to resolve this is to establish our economic power. China has used and leveraged its economic power to make it almost indispensable to the world community. And even in this tariff war with Donald Trump, they are able to look at America in the eye. We are poised to become the fourth largest economy in the world. Is that the real driver, you believe, for us to establish our global standing more than what we do across the border with Pakistan?
Well, it's a necessary condition, but it's not a sufficient condition. I think if you look at the transformation of our relationship with the rest of the world and the fact that we today have a place in the world which is much better than it was 10, 20, 30 years ago, it's a result of two things. One is, of course, a result of 7.5% growth steadily for 3 decades. But it's also a result of our demonstrating the will. When we did in 1998, when we decided to become an overt nuclear weapon state, we demonstrated the will to power. Both are necessary. And so it seems to me that it's not enough to say, oh, we're a big economy. It also depends on how you choose to use that hard power that you get. And each country has to do this in its own way. I don't think we should try and imitate China. China did what works for China. And the Chinese themselves describe it as having Chinese characteristics. We'll need to do it our way.
There is another elephant in the room, Mr. Menon, which is the United States. You've seen Donald Trump repeatedly taking credit for allegedly bringing India and Pakistan to a ceasefire, and thereby almost seemingly embarrassing India by hyphenating India with Pakistan, even claiming he's ready to work to a solution to Kashmir. How do you believe one deals with a Donald Trump? And in a Trumpian world, how does India establish a much stronger global presence?
I think you should let Mr. Trump say what he wants to say. He says a number of things. He also changes his mind on many things. He says one thing today, he says something else tomorrow. I don't think you should treat every single statement by Mr. Trump the way you might have treated every single statement by some previous American president, like, say, Mr. Obama, for instance. Frankly, whether we are rehyphenated or not is more in our own minds than in anybody else's minds. And there is no comparison between India and Pakistan. Well, we have an economy that's 11 times bigger than theirs, several times bigger. We have an army that's much more powerful. We matter to the world in ways. Pakistan makes herself useful, charges strategic rent. We matter economically in various ways, which Pakistan does not. And for us to keep hyphenating ourselves in our own mind and in our own projections, I find it quite strange that we do this. So I wouldn't worry so much about these odd statements here or there. I would go ahead with the basic task, which is strengthening India itself and improving our own capabilities and dealing with the problems that we face, which are fundamentally India's own development, its transformation, and this very difficult neighborhood that we have. And I said our major strategic challenge is China, and we need to deal with that. And what Mr. Trump says on the margins, frankly, I don't think we should jump and react to every single one.
Mr. Menon, we are seeing the world also entering into an era of multiple conflicts. Conflicts in the Middle East, conflicts in Europe,
Right.
possible escalation between Israel and Iran. Is that part of the problem? That therefore the world doesn't have enough time to focus on India and Pakistan because there are these conflicts taking place across the world. So the attention that we desire is not being met in global capitals.
Well, I don't know if you'd call it a problem or an opportunity. What seems to be happening is because of the absence of an international order and the traditional instruments of peace and security, like the UN Security Council and so on, are completely ineffective because of great power rivalry. Everybody thinks they have an opportunity to follow their own agenda, whether it's Russia and Ukraine, whether it's Israel and Palestine, wherever. Everyone thinks, Azerbaijan thinks it can do, and did, Nagorno-Karabakh with Armenia. Each one thinks Rwanda is interfering in Congo. Wherever you look, people, because of the absence of order, what you call the problem is actually for them an opportunity to chase their own agendas. And therefore you see much more conflict, much more illness. It's a strange paradox. The risk of great power direct conflict is probably lower today than it was 5 years ago, because Mr. Trump has decided to be nice to Mr. Putin and obviously respects Mr. Xi Jinping much more and is very reluctant to get involved in a war abroad or to commit the US abroad. So while the risk of great power conflict might have gone down, the risks of local conflicts, of civil wars, of foreign interference, of cross-border terrorism, all this has gone up tremendously. But whether you call that the problem or whether you call that an opportunity depends on your point of view. Unfortunately, most powers today are revisionist. Nobody likes the world the way it is. They want to change things, and they're all trying their luck.
And you believe India should also see this possibly as an opportunity then to try and reshape the world order and have a prominent place on that high table?
I'm not sure that you need to reshape the world order at this time, but I think you need to concentrate seriously on your core interests, the transformation of India and India's own security. These two things I think you need to look at very carefully and stop getting involved in peripheral things like chasing recognition and status and glory and whatever, revenge for history or whatever you want.
But does it worry you as a seasoned diplomat, and it's a question I alluded to earlier as well, that at times, even in the media, we tend to treat every happening as a game-changing event. That because we've launched Operation Sindoor, because we've targeted terror infrastructure in Pakistan, this is going to resolve everything. In a sense, are you telling those watching that, look, diplomacy is a process. Let's not get carried away. We've got to keep building our global standing brick by brick.
Exactly, that this is not a T20 match where every ball is a wicket or a sixer. I mean, this is much longer. It's much harder. And I don't think, in fact, there's a danger. You know, if you go in measuring the patient's temperature every 10 minutes, you'll give him a heart attack. You'll scare him to death. And I think really we should stop blowing up every statement, every single event into, as you said, somehow the game changer, the moment when everything shifts. But of course, that's difficult because both diplomats and journalists survive on this. So sometimes
the reason I'm asking you this is because in some of the narrative, the reason I asked you this, Mr. Menon, is in some of the narrative post-Operation Sindoor, we've also heard political parties blame the previous political party, saying in 2008, look at what happened during post 2611. Manmohan Singh's government was a very weak government. So the BJP targets the Congress. Now the Congress leadership says, Narendra, surrender. So we seem almost caught up in extremely hyper partisan politics where one side targets the other about things done or not done in the past or present.
That's unfortunate because frankly, it gets in the way of good foreign and security policy. If you're trying to score political points, then you stop actually following your interests. Then you're following some partisan interest rather than a national interest. And for the most part, in the past at least, we were careful not to do so.
Is that in a sense, in conclusion, a message that you would give perhaps the Modi government or those in power that you don't establish your global standing or your sense of power by constantly denigrating the past? And would that also be a message to the opposition that engaging in partisan politics is not going to enhance India's stature as well? We can't be united abroad and divided at home.
Well, I think they know that as well as we do. They don't need me to give them any message, and certainly not from a retired civil servant.
But to me, if you had to give a message, to those who followed you in the NSA's post or Dr. Shankar, who of course was a junior to you in the IFS, what would the big message be from Shivshankar Menon?
I'd say good luck. Because frankly, they know things and do things which I can't. So I'd say good luck to them.
Mr. Shivshankar Menon, appreciate your joining us. Thank you so much for giving us the big picture. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.